Brad, you good?
All right. Do you guys mind if we start early? I've never tried this before, so it's a new idea. I know, wow. Well, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for being here at the last session of the day. I'm really, really impressed you're all here. I thought it'd be me and the guys with the microphones, so thank you. And really the idea here, actually, can I just get a sense of who I've got? So how many of you would be considered like UX people? Or more designer? Or more developer? Or like project manager, CEO, gonna fund my next company? Okay, just checking. Anyone I missed, actually? Is there like a cool library scientist or something? No? Okay, fair enough. Well, the idea here was that we actually have done a series of work where we've really had to do, rapid. How many of you feel like you've sort of practiced LeanUX already? Okay, so not too many. Okay, good. So the idea here is really to give you a sense, we've really tried to sort of live and breathe this, and we've had clients that just really needed rapid turnaround. And so the question is, what can we do to help design a product or to a service or other things like that? And sort of what have we learned so far? So I'm going to try to go kind of quickly so that you can actually ask a bunch of, we can actually have a few more questions, hopefully. And then we can, I can treat you to a beer after this. Okay, perfect. So just really quickly, I just want to say that I lead a little company called Brilliant Experience, and really we do three things. My background is actually in psychology. Any other left-handed Canadian PhDs? Okay, just checking. So the key thing here is that we really do deeply understand the audience, really try to watch them work, do that sort of contextual inquiry or usability test, anything we can do to really understand the audience really quite deeply. And then really try to bring together the stakeholders and corral them to understand what their audience is saying, really understand what their business priorities are, and bring those together to come up with really interesting ideas that could be compelling for both groups. And then really we help with helping with the early ideation and the visual design and so on. And so I know you want me to keep going on that, but we do have a talk to give, so we will actually keep going. So fair enough. And thank you for stopping me. The other thing to say is that since we are the last talk, if you do actually have a question midstream, I can go ahead and you just feel free. Okay, so I just wanted to introduce the problem in general and then just tell you a little bit about what we've done that's been successful for a sort of LeanUX process. And a lot of that has to do with the sort of early strategy and that kind of stuff. But I want to just give you these little tricks that have really, really made a difference for us. So the first thing is that almost all of our clients, and the interesting thing is we work with two groups typically. We tend to work with either funded startups or, if you're really nice to me, ones that are about to be funded. And then secondly, we also work with these really large enterprises that want to act like startups that know that their major product needs to be revised dramatically. So it's sort of often they really want to try a blue sky, big bang kind of thing. And so they know there's a market for their product. They know that they don't have the right UX kind of people. They don't have interaction designers and user researchers like me and strategy kind of consultants and so on. And so they realize that what they were developing or where they are, they're kind of stuck. And then they need to move. And the problem is now we're a little further in the development cycle. They want to produce this product, and yet they still have to take a step back and do UX. So the last thing they want to do in an Agile process or something else is to introduce us, because we're just going to slow them down. And I'm here to say that actually, if we can build the right thing for them, we can actually keep it right on going. And we have worked a lot with Agile, and so I can tell you more about that too. And so really the idea is this, that we know there are some great ideas there. We know we want this great product. And so what do we do in between? So is there anything you guys want to say that you typically try to do to go from, we know there's this cool opportunity. So what are you doing right now? And any ideas? Yeah, okay. Well, you came to the right talk. I'm so glad. Okay, so first of all, Okay, we don't want to try this one. Good. And, getting that like magical rainbow unicorn designer is hard to come by, right? They're expensive. And also the thing is that, I've seen, first of all, they are hard to find. And the second thing is that typically there's a job description that says, hi, I'd like someone who does user research, wireframing, interaction design, HTML, CSS, am I missing anything? jQuery, JavaScript, responsive, Agile, upside down. And so it's just, you know, really, really hard. So what I wanted to say is that we really try to do some sort of rapid iteration and early ideation. And so pretty much if you just follow this, you're all set. And so what we did for a small client was we just sort of banged out what would be what we did at first is said, you know, what are the ultimate goals of the user? What are their flow going to be? What are the first things they're going to want to see? What are the second? What are the third? And then what are some of the blue post-it notes for some of the development implications of that? And so I'll just try and tell you on a bigger scale what we would do as well. And this is just a cute kind of thing. So if you've got it from this, you can go home. But I really want to say that here, you know, what is that we just did, and what kind of methodology is that? And so you guys have been quiet. I know it's late afternoon, but I need your help here, okay? So we're going to play the name that methodology game, okay? So you can just, as soon as you see it and you recognize it, just shout it out. Okay. So if you empathize with your audience, do some early ideation and prototype and learn through prototyping, and then you test it and you circle back, that's... Okay, sorry, I heard lean and I heard... I'm sorry, what was the other? I'm sorry, I just didn't hear you. It's my ears, it's not you. Okay. Okay, I would call this design thinking. So really it is sort of this, if you've seen, you know, the D school at Stanford, the design school is new. They really go with the, what we like to call Brilliant Experience of the West, or IDEO. They have this, you know, you first empathize, then you hear early definition of it, and as you're prototyping, you're learning through prototyping and making these better. Okay, so, and the other thing there is you're trying to find this balance between business and user needs combined with technology. Okay, cool. Okay, how about this? We want to build, measure, learn. Okay, so now we're ready. So that's really the classic lean startup style, okay? So if you go and get Eric's book or Jeff Gottlieb or any of the lean group that are sort of signature lean people, they really have, you know, and do any of you go to the Lean Startup Circle here in DC? It's actually very good. So I really encourage you to go, actually. It's worthwhile. And they're really interesting people, actually, very different sorts that go, so it's worth it. Cool. There actually is a design thinking DC group as well, and they've got a summer program they're putting on that's actually going to be really interesting. Okay, cool. Last one. What do you think? Okay, I'd say Agile too. Good. Okay, and you know, there's like a very clearly defined process for the sort of lean startup, a very clean, you know, process for design thinking, and you know, really everyone pretty much agrees on what Agile is like too. So we're pretty much all set, right? Oh, sorry. Never mind. You know, it really is hard to define exactly, you know, when you're doing Agile flow versus water-Agile. And so, anyway, Agile is something that's being defined still. But I guess I'd say that within all of those, there's this rapid iteration, there's this notion of learning and so on. So we want to go beyond this magical rainbow unicorn, and we want to get to actually what it is that we would do in LeanUX. So let's talk about that. Cool. And really, so... do any of you recognize this picture? This is a very high fidelity drawing, but the idea here, it is actually from, it's replicated in a number of places, but Jeff Gottlieb, he's one of the people in the New York area, and he has written a book called LeanUX that just came out recently. And one of the things in some of the articles he's written, it says this. Basically, you've got an early idea, a concept, you try to prototype it. So in this case, we're really talking about some sort of early you know, framework where you can test it, right? And you just show it to your internal audience, work with your customers, you know, learn from all those things that people want to change and cycle through and iterate, okay? So that's the one piece that you know, he generally says as a process, it's a reasonable idea, right? And there are slight variations whether or not you're doing this internally or externally for a client. Okay, cool. And really there are sort of two things here broadly defined that I just get you to focus on. So one of them is that we do need to balance our user and our audience needs, right? So we actually are paying attention to our audience. We're not just building internally for what we think they want. And then, you know, it is that kind of design thinking like ethos. So there's that piece. And the other is just that everything you saw previously had something to do with iteration, right? Whether it was Agile, design thinking, lean startup, and so on, okay? So we know we need to incorporate those kind of things in this too. So really what I want to say is that's the kind of idea. I want you to think about this early definition, getting your strategy right, then iterative design. So, okay. So I did really well at introducing this, so now I actually have to do something about it. So I told you that we would have our top 10 secrets to LeanUX. So let's just go ahead and try and see if we can make it to number 10 here. Okay, cool. So I would say the first thing is that, you know, when you're thinking about this LeanUX stuff, we're really thinking about prototype, test, iterate, prototype, test, iterate. And I'm just telling you that I don't think you're going to get there unless we get the strategy right first. So I just want to say that a lot of these secrets actually are in the early processes, even before you're iterating your design. And so I wanted to keep that in mind for you too. And let's just try to be really pragmatic with all this stuff. Okay, so one of the things that we do, and actually I think it's really starting to take off in the industry, is just to have sort of 1 to 5 day strategy session we do with our clients. And so the really small groups, we're in and out in a day, and we really just pound through all these ideas. But the number one thing here is we just really get internal focus and agreement on what their biggest priorities are as a company. So what are they trying to do? So let me just ask you if you can name, like, what is the biggest thing that your company is trying to do with your biggest signature product? Exactly. Okay, so you need to know that right away, right? Even if it's 3:38 in the afternoon, you're a little caffeine low. But so there's that. And then the second is just really deeply understanding your audience and knowing what they're really after, as opposed to what you would like them to buy and so on, or how you'd like them to act. And then lastly, we do some early ideation, and that's really, I'll show you what I mean by that, just quick sketching, and that's to get everyone in line. So how many of you have had your CEO of your company sketching? Okay, luckily I'm the CEO, so it works. But yeah, okay, good. There's a handful of you, and it is actually really important because, first of all, what's the first thing that CEO tells me when I tell them we're about to sketch? I'll write some bullet points because I don't do sketching. And so then we say, okay, well, can you make this thing? It's a newfangled product. It's called a rectangle. And then they're actually usually willing to do that, and they think I'm a smartass. And then they'll actually start drawing. And so what you find, though, is really that it's very helpful to see them actually struggle and come up with some ideas, and then see, A, the value, hopefully, that we would provide as our UX team, B, that there are other people there that have great ideas too, and C, just that, hey, there's value being added by doing this process. So it's a really good to enlighten them, and they learn a lot really fast that way. So I really do encourage you to try it out. And then obviously we try to get a little more detailed into sketching. So let me just try and tell you what this strategy session might be like as part of this. So, and this is actually a true story. So, we went in, we were all set to do a strategy session for a couple days. And, I'm actually trying to keep those pictures a little vague because anyway, even though there have been pictures taken of them. But anyway, the key part here was the CEO said, hey, it's really great you came in, you got all this process, we're going to do great stuff, but I think we know what we need to do. So let's just go ahead and do some quick drawings and get, keep it moving along a little faster. I want to, why are we waiting around for all this process? So you can see actually that, this person here had these big circles they were going to draw for what this app thing was going to be. This person here had these boxes that were going to be like a dashboard that flowed around. This person here had tiles that are going to slide. And this person here had all this like mapping stuff that's going to zoom in and out. So I'd like to say that actually he actually did a wonderful service for me by saying that no one agreed at that point on what they wanted to do. And so I wanted to give them something a little more systematic. Okay. I think this is actually a really good exercise. How many of you, have you ever done this, just a really simple elevator pitch kind of thing? Yeah, it's worth it. Okay, so it's just literally, your product is for target customer, and get everyone to do this independently, and then you put these all up on the wall and see what people said. It's for this, who have this customer need, and therefore, this, in this case, ModevUX is a blah, 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 that has this key benefit, unlike its competition. So who do you think is Modev's competition here? ModevUX? I'm just curious. No right answer. Well, there is a... Oh, yeah, the conference next door on HR. Woo! So, sorry, it's probably very interesting. And then there's, so we just wanted to say, basically, what's the elevator pitch, and can you all articulate it, and are you all thinking in the same way? So it's trying to get alignment, right? So in this case here, we had different people put these things up, and this was actually for a group that does these races that are like, mud runs, right? So you go and you have to not just do a 5K, but you have to like climb over this wall and then go through this, stream and then climb under this barbed wire. And anyway, the interesting thing that I thought that I learned actually from them was when people said what it was, some people call these obstacle races, but someone said this is like a lifestyle change, and I was like, whoa. And so, it was really interesting. And their competition was like doing nothing, right? It was really interesting to see how different people perceived it. And so we learned a little bit, both as their consultant to get me up to speed with their vision, but also it was really interesting to see how different people answered that it's so much bigger than just a race. And so that's really what these guys were about. So it was interesting. So anyway, I think it's valuable, that piece. So with the business goals too, we just try to get people to write down all the business goals on Post-it notes real quick. We try to get them I give them examples like totally wow users as an example of what not to write down. And then try to say, hey, maybe you're trying to drive this user behavior for this goal. Or maybe you're trying to create opportunities to have people, buy this and so on. And really the idea here is get people to write those down, organize them all together, the ones that are consistent, and then give people a few dots, really simple, and just say, where are the most dots? And then you can see it a little bit democratically, what really are the priorities of the company. And make sure that people really agree by the time we're done. So the biggest thing here is just this. So we actually made it to a secret. And the idea here is that we want stakeholders to not only tell us what their business priorities are, but we want them to prioritize those things and really say that this is the number one, this is number two, this is number three, and get everyone in the room to agree. And then when we come up with a design and so on, we can say, does it meet those goals or not? And that's what we said we're driving to. So it's really, really helpful. Oops. Got a neighbor calling me. I'm going to let that go. Okay. Okay, so personas. Awesome timing, Ian. So the second thing is once we've got those prioritized business things, then we want to think audience, right? So now we're thinking about our audience for the product or personas. Are you all familiar with personas? Just what would you call a persona? Like what if you had to describe it to someone? So you've got your boss saying, and this guy wants to do personas. It's like $5,000. What the? So what would you say what is a persona? Okay, so definition of a category of users. I think that's pretty fair. Was there anything else you're going to say? Yeah, user archetype. Okay. Yeah. I'm going to stick to you. You got the best words. Okay, cool. And so the first thing I was going to say here too is we start by just saying, give me a name for a persona, even before we describe it. And then we did the little sticker thing just to see who is it that they actually thought were most important. And in this case, we had this scatter shot, and that was actually relevant too, to see that they didn't really have a prioritized group of audiences quite as much as they could have in this particular case. But it is really, I think if you just start by saying, for example, we walked into one of the Manhattan banks, and they said, okay, we're all set for you. We're going to do this online banking refresh. And I just want to say we've got all 42 personas lined up, and we just don't know where to start. And it really was, I think they said 43. I apologize. But really, what's the challenge with that is it's overwhelming, right? We need to try to get to that 80-20 rule and see they may truly have that many audiences, but we need to prioritize for a few key ones. And so that's the first thing I would say is that if we can just say, here are the audiences that we think we collectively as this group think are most important for the evidence that we have from hit rates and everything else, then we can go and focus on them a little better, right? Okay, so we want to prioritize our business priorities, prioritize our personas. Then we want to make our personas. And it's okay to have the little sketchy, drawing. And it's okay to have a silly name. And actually, it tends to stick with people if you do that. And I'm here to say that we try to get people to do this rapidly. So it's literally you've got 20 minutes. We're going to make every persona for your app. It's remarkable, but just to get people in the right neighborhood, right? And get them to show it to each other and present them. And so the other thing I was going to say is, we have been hired to do really extensive personas that have all sorts of like matrix of different things they're thinking about at different times with a, detailed journey of the person. And really here I'm saying that this is LeanUX. We're not going to get into these huge deliverables that take a week to do. We're pounding it out so that we can move on and start to prototype really quickly. Okay? So definitely capable of doing that, but in this case, that's not our focus. Okay, so we just want to sketch these personas, and we don't want to marry them. So we're just trying to get to what is the kind of nugget that's about that persona. That's the idea here. Okay. So the other thing is that with these personas come scenarios. So what is the situation in which they would be using their, potentially buying your product or interacting with your website or hitting your app or considering buying your app, all these kind of, or the, whatever the situation might be. We want to know, thinking about that person in that moment, what are they thinking about? Because it's so different than just saying, okay, well, they need to know about the following 6 benefits. For example, I had a group that said, okay, we want to put like a lot of writing into this little screen here, and it's going to be really great. Turns out that was in a tank, and this thing is like bouncing around like this, right? So they can get like 3 words in there, and that's it. So the scenario really, really matters, right? So in this case here, this was, again, going back to this racing group, okay? This person had a persona called Fearful Frank, and so you can see his knees are knocking together, and the artist is actually very impressive. But the key point here was that, hey, if this person's deciding whether or not to run in this race, and he's kind of being pressured in because everyone else at the office is, this person's probably panicking and saying, oh, am I going to get injured? Is there an ambulance there? Is there, and so knowing what that person is thinking at that moment will really help us to know what we need to put on the site to prepare that person and get them, either to decide they're willing to do the race or it's not for them. But I think the most important thing is there are all these things probably rattling through this person's head in rapid fire, and if we can answer those and get that person a little calmer, then maybe they're more interested in doing this. Or, do they know if this is really about, ultra marathons for people who are incredible athletic beasts, or is it for a whole bunch of people to have fun and some are going to go faster? So, so that kind of thing can actually really, really matter. So I really encourage you, if you, of anything I'm saying here, just try that scenario and you'd be shocked at how differently that person might think of your navigation or of your flow of your app and so on. I think it's really valuable. It doesn't take a lot of time. What we do is we got people, teams to work on these and then to present it to the rest of the group and discuss. It's actually really valuable to do it that way. Okay, so in that I'm just saying that this experience journey is really important. So, when I'm thinking about my wedding pictures and my baby and my laptop, those are probably, start to smell smoke in my house. Those are the things I want to take out maybe. In contrast, maybe my TV and my couch and my coffee table are like heavy things I don't want to carry. So, it all depends on the situation, on how you organize the information. So that's why I want you to think about the experience at that moment. Cool so far? Okay, good. Okay, so we've thought about who our audiences are and what they're doing and when they might want to interact with your product. We've thought about what our business priorities are. Great. Now it's time to actually think about what is this product going to look like. Okay, so the one piece is just really rapid fire thinking of the different possibilities. The other is doing more detailed kind of sketching stuff. So let's just think about this real quick. So the thing we try to do here is get people to really rapidly pound out all kinds of possible ideas for this product, right? This is about volume. It's not about quality. It's about trying to get every angle we can think of and explore it just a little to see if we should further explore it, okay? And so really the idea is we want them to present these early ideas, show them to everyone, and then a few people will be like, oh yeah, maybe we can do that, man. And then we critique it in a gentle fashion, iterate, and get better. And say, hey, I think these are the 4 we want to look at. Let's work on those a little bit more out of the 35 or 40 that we've come up with, okay? So I'll just show you these in turn real quick. So the first thing is that we try to have a piece of paper that maybe has like 8 squares on a page, like really pretty small. And we want people to come up with these ideas. So there's, this crazy map one here, and these floating bubbles, and we have a pizza that's like rotating, and so all kinds of ideas, right? And it's fair enough, we'll give them a chance to explain their idea and see what the nugget is behind that idea. And so the whole point is to have very, very different kinds of concepts and see what works. Okay, cool. So the other thing that this brings up, though, is there are some logical design alternatives, kind of big picture directions that we could take, right? Whether this is purely an app play, or whether it has to do with, social networking that requires that natural language processing in your iPhone, for example, all those kind of things. So we can do that debate and get that done and sort of know that here are the range of things we're thinking about. And if you can do that with your stakeholders and kind of nail that down early on, it's so much easier going forward. So I really do encourage you to have that early. Okay, cool. The other piece is, with sketching, we try to do really quick sketches as well. So this is when the CEOs, again, begrudgingly says, do I have to do rectangles again? We say yes. And so at that point, then we start to do a little bit of drawing, and you can see this is not a detailed design, right? This isn't a design spec we can go hand off to a set of developers, right? So the whole point here was to get a conceptual direction. So they liked that there would be these new events that would be open right when you started this, and they liked the idea of having a wall kind of like Facebook for this app, and they like to have, in this case here, that it really emphasizes you and your rating in the community and so on, and that, hey, there are these other people you could meet or learn about, and or just be nosy and want to look at and learn a little bit more of who else is using the system, right? So there were all these sort of psychological things we were thinking about that were embodied in this design. And I'm not going to get into what this does because I didn't want to be good until I launched. But I think the point here is we had sort of a general plan going forward. There were all kinds of things that were underspecified, but we kind of all agreed at the end of the meeting, this is the thing we want to explore further. And so the big thing here that's very subtle that is kind of feels like design, but it's really not, right? It's really about the big picture ideas. So I want to say that at the end of this kind of sort of strategy session, whether it's 2 days or 4 days or 1 day, we want to come up with a conceptual model the stakeholders love, and we don't want to do design with them in that sense. So we don't want them to build in, hey, you know, I've got a great idea. Ready for it? Dancing monkeys. And so there was actually you think I make this up, right? But there really was a group that wanted to have, where the actually wasn't a CEO, it was anyway, the head of the organization. It was like, yeah, we need to have these dancing monkeys at the top of the page. And there was something about, there was like a submariner group, and it had something to do with, like, you know, their symbol was something like monkeys, and anyway. But the key point was that most people who are looking for when is their submariner going to come home and how can I, you know, connect with them at the party, we're not looking for the dancing monkey. So the key point here is let's agree on the big picture concept, and then let the designers work on the details so we can keep the dancing monkeys for another day. Okay, cool. So we made it to, here's what we should start designing. Let's start doing this iterative design, okay? So how many of you actually have done this sort of iterative design kind of process? Great. So what do you start with? Do you start with hand drawings? Do you start with early prototype? Do you love HTML? What are you using right now? Sure. Uh-huh. Okay, so at least getting the concepts and agreeing on them. Okay, that's fair. All right, anyone else over here? Did you want to? Sure, go ahead. Sure, whiteboarding is great, but so we can rattle off a bunch of tools. So there's Balsamiq is one of the ones that helps you with, you know, sort of rough sketches. You can do, in Axure actually has a setting, a dial you can do for make it rough or make it finer. If you're JP Morgan or you've got a good budget with your group and I want to talk to you after this, you were using iRise. Anyway, there's another one called Proto.io that claims to help you with responsive design. There's a whole series of these. And there are a series of us that are starting to learn HTML and actually programming straight in, or, you know, wireframing straight into that, I should say. Okay, so the key point here is rapidly. And I just want to say that, you know, with this group here, we maybe spent 2 weeks and had 10 iterations. Like, we really pounded it out, and we kept changing and changing and changing and changing. And I think that really seeing it, trying it with your users, making a change. Like, we were making changes. We had test in the morning, test in the afternoon. We'd have a new version between the two. Cool. So I think the key part here is the rapidly part. If you can be moving fastest, that means that there are a couple of things. Your organization will start to listen, like, holy crap, this thing is moving fast. I better pay attention to this person. So you're getting a little bit more street cred simply by being the most prolific of all the people around. And so that CEO that's like, hey, I got a great idea, wait for it, then, you know, it's too late because we already got another version, and then he has to react to that. So it can actually help people stay focused. So I really encourage you to keep new little bits changing, even with small iterations, letting people know it's happening. The other thing here that's exactly related to this is we want lots of people to know about this. So we typically do things in Axure, and we publish it to an internal site, and they know, and there's a email blast pretty much every day. There's a new version, go check it out. And we do actually go around and see anyone from the secretary to the C-suite people and meet them and say, hey, have you tried it out? Let's go try it out now. And just talk to them about it and make sure they're aware and make sure people feel like they're being listened to as well internally. We absolutely test the audience, and really that's our primary concern, but we want to make sure that they feel like they're being thought of too. Okay, usability testing is not a big shock, but like this one here, you can see with this app. So, you know, what's it about? Perfect answer. See, we didn't really, when we did usability testing, we really didn't find anything wrong with this first design, but except for all these things. And so really the thing that came out very, very quickly was that this sort of hid everything about the cool stuff and buried it in navigation. So, you know, we came up with something that just had a little bit more, this was a wireframe still, but just that there's, you know, actions you can do on the left, and there's something cool you can do in the middle, and there's a big play button. What's that for? And so, you know, it starts to get people thinking a little bit more about what's happening. So that usability testing is so important to watch people work, not necessarily for them to tell you how to change it, but to watch their behavior and to see what their expectations are. Okay, so we want to test continuously, whether it's that early written thing or it's with something very advanced that's clickable. You can actually get pretty far in Acture when it comes to you know, pretending something's working. So for now, I'd encourage you to try that one. So the last thing is just really that, see, I told you the HR meeting was cool. The last thing is just that, you know, user experience matters. That, you know, in this case here, when we started with this gray screen with a big black, you know, blank, literally blank canvas, or this guy here with a little bit of, it's, you know, it's bubbles, but it's kind of cool bubbles. If you had to pick which one works better, right? So first of all, the functionality is identical, right? But we know from usability, from all sorts of research, people are going to say that one on the right works better. Now, it's true that it's better architected, I'd like to say, but it's just by looking at it you make that split-second decision, okay? So it really is worth taking time with visual design and interaction design to get to a higher level. It's so important, and it really will, you know, how many of you have used Instagram? Okay. Okay, how many of my kids are addicted to Instagram? Both. And then how many are addicted to any other app beyond that one? Not so many. And it's a simple UX thing. They all take pictures. They all have, you know, filters. It's simple. So it's a UX thing. So it is worth doing. Okay, so take the time to produce those brilliant experiences. Okay, so we made it to 10. So let's just review here. So the good news is I have all these on my website, so you don't have to frantically write things down, and I'm happy to talk to you after too. But you know, the goal here was to say that, hey, this LeanUX stuff is relatively simple to do. You can do it as well as I can, and you can learn this stuff too. And I think it really is powerful to make a quick change. You'd be shocked at these big organizations when we can produce a pretty fine prototype in 6 weeks, and they were like, oh, we've been working on that for like 3.5 years. It makes changes, and you make an impact, and you'll make a difference. So I really do want you to do that. So it's really simple. Prioritize business goals. Prioritize personas. Those are so important, those ones, just those. The experience journey of just where they're at, and then really rapidly iterating and testing and taking the time to make a great user experience. So cool. So, you know, I think that's really about all I wanted to say. So, so thank you so much. And I'm happy to answer any questions too, but there you go. Cool.